But he was like, yeah, like rowing, also known as crew. It's like just this cool balance of, really intense and competitive, but it's also very like serene and relaxing and Zen-like. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, who is this guy?
Welcome back to the MTA podcast, the best podcast out right now. Thank you for listening, liking, and most importantly, subscribing. Go ahead and hit the bell to always know when a new podcast is out. Our next guest was on the men's heavyweight crew team at Dartmouth College, was a senior procurement specialist, and was a sourcing manager at Nuo Brands, executing sourcing strategies for over $130 million category. JOSEPH Polwerk.
Now I'm a teacher at Monte Vista.
Now he's a teacher at Monte Vista. Sweet. So how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We're good. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So I want to start off with how you grew up as a kid. So do you have any like fond memories as a kid playing sports or anything like that?
Yeah, I grew up in Pasadena in California, near LA, and always playing sports, football, baseball primarily, always a sports fan. And yeah, just a great place to grow up outside of the grind of LA, kind of nestled in the hills up there in San Gabriel Valley. Just a really pleasant childhood and loving, supportive family. But yeah, then college, went out to the East Coast, so that was a big change for me.
Yeah. So what was the process of picking a college? And was Dartmouth the number one college you went to, or like you wanted to go to, or?
Yeah. So I went to a college prep school like Monte Vista, and really everything was oriented towards getting into the best school you could get into. And I decided at an early time I wanted to leave the state. I was adventurous and just wanted to find a place that would help me thrive and just felt like an adventure. And Dartmouth is in New Hampshire, like on the New Hampshire-Vermont border, and very rural. And I actually ended up applying early decision there. So I knew what college I was going to way before my friends. So highly recommend that approach for all you juniors.
Okay. Well, we're seniors, so it's a little bit late for that. But that's actually crazy because it's a very prestigious school. I was doing my due diligence, and it was established in the 1700s.
I think 1769.
Yeah, that is insane. It's in a ton of famous movies, as we were talking about before. So one thing I also want to talk about was your rowing. You were in the men's heavyweight crew team. So, I mean, that's not a lot of people are in that. It's pretty a crazy sport. So, what are some memories you have of that, like getting into that?
Yeah, first of all, not a lot of people know what rowing is. So competitive rowing in college is just you're getting in these huge boats. They call them shells. And typically there's multiple people in a boat, like 8 people or 4 people. And often what's called a coxswain, with like someone steering the boat, encouraging you on. And you're racing. Essentially you're racing either one other boat or a bunch of other boats. And yeah, I got into rowing when I was in high school. I actually joined a rowing camp. It was like a 2-week rowing camp, and it was on the encouragement of a random person that I met. I was actually
really,
yeah, it was my best friend. His dad was hosting a rare book party, and I was a bookworm and went to the party, and I didn't know anybody, and I was actually hanging out next to the bartender, and I was not drinking. But he's like, oh, wow, like the sports I most respect are motocross and crew. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, who is this guy? But he was like, yeah, like rowing, also known as crew. It's like just this cool balance of, really intense and competitive, but it's also very like serene and relaxing and Zen-like. I was just very curious. I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, you'd be so good. You're so tall. Like a lot of tall guys do it. And so I went to this camp in Long Beach. It was like an hour away from where I lived. And it was a 2-week summer camp, and I just immediately fell in love with it. So yeah, I was playing sports in high school, baseball, football, and it was a really tough call. But after my senior year, after my football season, I decided to quit baseball and to try rowing out. And so I went into Long Beach that season and did it. And best decision I ever made. I loved it. I did it in college. I walked on, and rowing is one of those sports where you don't need a ton of experience to get going. And it's an opportunity. A lot of people who've never rowed before join in college, and they're able to thrive. So I did. Yeah.
Is it true that crew is the most challenging but most fulfilling sport?
100% agree. There's a lot of recent exposure to rowing, like the movie The Social Network, and the book The Boys in the Boat. Highly recommend it to you guys, even if you don't like books. It's a nonfiction story of a group of college kids at University of Washington during the Great Depression, and
WSU.
Just University of Washington, not state. And they actually went to the Olympics and rowed against like Germany. This is like leading up to World War II. So it's like a cool mixture of history and but also like the philosophy of rowing. There's a really cool, they call him a shell maker, the guy who makes the boats. Okay. His last name is Pocock. And he kind of talks about the philosophy, like, wow, what's so powerful about rowing, and how like the effort that takes and the commitment and just everyone being in the boat together, and just what it takes to like teamwork and work ethic. So yeah, I encourage you, people who aren't familiar with the sport, to check that book out, and you'll learn a lot about it.
That's pretty sweet. And yeah, it's just crazy. So I've seen pictures of these boats. I did some research. You told me you should watch a video. I saw some videos. It is, if you haven't right now, go look on YouTube, men's heavyweight rowing, because it's very competitive. You can see these guys just like putting everything into it. So how big are the boats that you're going into? Because you said they were pretty big. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, they're super long. They're like an 8-person shell is like 60 feet long, 62 feet long. Wow. And it only weighs like 200 pounds or so. And they're not very wide. They're very narrow.
Do you know what it's made out of? Like,
some of them are like carbon fiber.
Yeah, carbon fiber.
They used to be made out of wood. The technology is always changing. But one thing that you might not realize is that they actually go backwards. And so you're propelling it using your legs, and you're not facing the direction you're going. So the coxswain, the person steering the boat, is helping guide you. And most of the courses are straight lines, but they still need to make sure that everyone's, you're going in a straight line.
Mm-hmm. Does it take a lot of endurance to row?
Definitely.
And how long are the trips that you're going on, the races?
Yeah, in the spring, typically the races are 2,000 meters. It takes around 6 minutes.
Wow.
And then in the fall, they do what's called head races. They're longer races, maybe 6,000 meters or 5,000 meters, and they take around like 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
So it's a different type. It's like having a cross country team, doing a 5K, and then in the spring doing track, like, a mile run.
Yeah.
So it's a different skill set, but rowers do both of those.
Do you think rowing is more mental or physical?
Great question. I think it's both. I think the two are tied to each other, but physically it is one of the most challenging sports. I've heard like Nordic skiing and rowing being compared as like the top two most challenging physically. Mm-hmm. But that mental component really is what distinguishes the winners, because the races are often decided by less than a second. And I think that willpower is really what pushes you over the edge. So I think the training that goes into it, it's a year-long sport. I'd have to say both, but mental, that toughness can go a really long way.
Yeah. So what's the longest you've ever rowed for? Like you're out with the fellas, you know what I mean? It's practice. You're going out there. Like, does coach make you row for an hour and a half, or what's the longest?
Yeah. So even though the races are only like 6 minutes, you'll still go on these long rows, like, maybe an hour and a half. You rest a little bit and turn around. And we're on a river, like in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. The river we rowed on was called the Connecticut River. And so we'd row up maybe like an hour one direction and turn around and come back. And it's a long way to go, but it's just compare it to like, a runner and runner being like going out for like a 2-hour jog.
Okay. All right. So I also want to talk about your job at Newell.
Oh, yeah.
I saw from your LinkedIn.
Did you research?
I did my research. There's a lot. You're very qualified. I can say that. There's a lot in your bio. So talk about your job at Newell and what you did.
Yeah. So the company I worked at, it's called Newell Brands. It was actually the result of a merger of two other corporations, Jarden and Newell Rubbermaid. Mm-hmm. And just the company itself, it's an interesting company because it's a consumer goods company where they own like dozens of different brands, like close to 100 different brands, like Sharpie and Coleman and
Wow.
Mr. Coffee and Rawlings baseball.
Okay.
And when I first joined, I was like a supply chain analyst, and that was right out of college. And I moved into the procurement department, where I was basically helping with what's called sourcing, figuring out which suppliers we should use. And, we made around half of our products and bought the other half from overseas factories. And so just finding that balance of which suppliers are going to give quality products and balancing like on-time deliveries and finding the best cost. And so basically I learned how to negotiate for a living. I was trying to find the best possible price and secure the best components and materials. So being an analyst was a lot of data, a lot of using Excel and looking at prices. And then when I worked as a manager, it was more oversight over a category, like taking ownership over it. So the role changed a lot. The company itself evolved a lot over time. I think we grew, we tripled or quadrupled in size when I was there. And it started out as a very small corporate office. There's only a dozen of us there, but it was like a $12 billion company when I left, and just a lot of responsibility. I got to travel a lot and take ownership over it, and that's just a huge growing experience for me.
That's super cool. So you're at Newell, right? You're doing all this stuff. What led you to leaving, and what did you do after you leave?
Yeah, so rather than me leaving, I was more going towards something. Okay. After Newell, while I was at Newell, I was really dreaming about what I wanted to do with my career and my life, and thinking and praying about my calling. And it was actually teaching that encouraged me to pursue, the job, the position here at Monte Vista. So I had been volunteering with Young Life. It's just an organization, a Christian organization that mentors high school students. And I just loved working with the kids. I loved just the fulfillment. It just felt like a very meaningful calling for me. And I felt God was calling me into that space on a more full-time basis. And funny story about me applying to schools. I don't know how many people I've told this to, but I knew I wanted to teach. I remember I was on a beach in Thailand with my brother, and I was like, wow, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to teach. I'm going to quit my job and try this new thing. And I had a few friends encouraging me to do it, but I applied to probably 50 different schools, 60 schools, writing all these cover letters and, polish my resume up. And nobody got back to me. It was maybe it was Monte Vista and maybe one other school even replied to my emails and applications. And it was totally a God thing. I applied to Monte Vista I think I applied as a history teacher, and because I was a history major in college at Dartmouth, and they had an econ opening. And I was like, sure, econ, I worked in business, I can do that. And it was just an opening. So I was living in Connecticut at the time, so it required a cross-country move for me. And growing up in California, I knew how awesome it is up in Santa Cruz area. So I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. And I got the offer, and really grateful for the opportunity. But it was just it was a foot in the door. And once I came to Monte Vista, it was, different subjects, economics, entrepreneurship, U.S. history, global politics. And I've really just fallen in love with the profession. And totally the best move I could have made. I loved everything about Newell and procurement and supply chain, but teaching feels like a calling for me.
Wow. That is a crazy story. From Dartmouth to Newell to MVC. So as we're ending the podcast, I want to play this new segment since this is going to be released. As the time you're releasing this is probably near Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving, somewhere around there. So the holiday seasons are coming up. So I want to do a segment called Your Ideal Stocking Stuffer. So we've all been there. We've had bad stocking stuffers and great stocking stuffers. So what's the worst stocking stuffer you have ever received? Ever?
The worst. I'm grateful for any gift. I remember as a joke, I think my parents got me, how they always joke that you're going to get coal if you're a bad boy. I think they got me a reindeer poop. And I thought it was a coal or something, but it was actually some sort of baked good. It was a treat. So it was candy. So what I thought was a horrible gift ended up kind of being
being a good gift.
Last year, I think the best stocking stuffer I got was I got like a spice kit. It had like chili peppers and
Oh,
all
okay.
kinds of cool.
Okay.
I love cooking, and
Yeah.
so all kinds of spices in there, and it fits in a huge stocking. And I used it for the rest of that year. I don't know if you guys have heard of umami before.
I've heard of umami. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so there's different flavor sensations, right? There's
Okay.
salty and sweet and sour. But one that's a little bit more mysterious is this concept called umami, and it's like savory.
Okay.
And so like mushrooms have umami.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Soy
Yeah.
sauce has it, but it's like when you eat it, it's just very satisfying and like hearty and savory.
Yeah.
And one of the spices I got was like an umami spice, and it was like the secret ingredient. I put it in people's
Everything.
dishes when I make it, and people are like, "Oh, it's so good.
What is that?
Yeah,
What is that? Yeah.
And it was from a stocking.
That's crazy. Today, the sponsor of the podcast is MTA. Say it with me.
MTA.
If you have any free time to listen or you just want to join in on a good conversation, check out MTA Podcast, the best choice by far. Back to the podcast.
I'm curious to just ask you guys a question, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
You asked a lot, about my career and
Uh-huh.
college decisions and
Yes.
how I approached that. How do you guys approach like what career you want to do or what college you want to go to? Like what types of factors contribute to that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm the youngest of 4 children. So the oldest child is 34, 35. And she has 2 kids. She's married, has a house. So the age gap from that was, the knowledge I got from that was you can't buy that. And I also have an older brother and an older sister who are much older than me, 7 and 9 years older than me. So I'm learning new things every day about going into sales or going to college and applying and stuff like that. So I think having those older siblings helped me come to the decision that I'm going to come to, which is I'm probably going to go to Cabrillo for 2 years, find out what I want to do, see how my brother's career goes in sales. If it's too stressful, if that's what I want to go do. And then from there, transfer to a college like WSU or San Jose State, and then graduate there. And then maybe apply for an internship or start working. Start at the bottom and work your way up. And then eventually, I'd really like to start a business, whether it be like having an invention, or creating like a whole company around like sales or something like that. I love the fact that I can, if I really want to do things, I can put my mind to it. I think working like 9 to 5 I have no problem with that. I'd love to have a BMW 3 Series base model. I go into the office with my suit and my penny loafers. I love that life, you know what I mean? But I want more of it. I want to have the nice house. I want to have the Lamborghini, you know what I mean? So I think later down the line, and I've heard so many people talk about this, like when they were getting started, they were like 40s and 50s, talking about how they're successful now in their 60s and 70s. So I'm pretty young, so life will take me the way it wants to take me, and we'll see from there, right?
So my entrepreneurship class, you're in it, Maddie.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, does it make you more or less excited about the prospect of starting your own business?
It makes me so much excited. I go home and I'm like, dude, I've just watched this video of Mark Cuban. It's like, I saw that this guy was nobody. I'm like, dude, I'm going to do this. And I'm thinking of ideas. I'm thinking of new things to start. I'm writing down my ideas, drawing up ideas. It really does. I'm shocked it's even a class. It's almost illegal. It's like, it's too much real world knowledge to, like, it's not like I'm not on my phone in class, like not even paying attention. I'm there, I'm taking notes. Like, I really do enjoy it. It really is a good class. And you're a great teacher too. I must have to say that too.
Thank you. It's easier to teach something you're passionate about. And,
it is.
And seeing all my students, yourself included, really thrive and interested in it really is motivating and encouraging for me.
Yeah.
And Andre, for you, like your approach with picking a career and picking a college, where are you with that?
So my main goal is to play baseball as long as I can. If I can make it to the top, that's my end goal. For college, I'm looking at all of the best colleges for baseball, the best like scouting teams. Obviously, like my number one would have been Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. That's like a hard school to get into. So I kind of want to start off slow, maybe go to like a JUCO. I've been looking at Monterey Peninsula College because I know a lot of people that go there, and they're actually really good at baseball. And my dad knows the coach personally, and the coach has obviously he has connections to other scouts. So I think that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. You know, getting connections, meeting new scouts, new coaches, new players that know other coaches. But yeah, that's my goal.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a very talented baseball player. It'd be awesome to see your progress there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you guys talk about colleges, and you mentioned Vanderbilt. Do you think students at Monte Vista are comfortable applying to schools out of state? Do you think that seems like people are looking for an adventure, or would you say California is such an awesome place no one wants to leave it?
I think it's a mix. I think a lot of people like California for the obvious reasons, the weather, all the different places you can go to, the snow, the beach, the mountains, Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people do want to go out of state because obviously there's a lot more schools, and I know somebody that's actually applying to school in England. If I don't know if you know Clayton King.
Yeah.
He's going to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's just personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
If they like it here, they like it here. I mean, this is a great spot to be in, but there's a lot of opportunity in other places.
Mm-hmm. When I was in high school and looking around colleges, sort of my peer group, everyone was looking to leave the state just for an adventure. Like, people plan on coming back eventually, but I'm just wondering do you think, Maddie, maybe the Monte Vista students crave that experience out of state, or like from your peer group? What have you seen?
Well, I think it depends on your home life. Like 9 out of 10 times, if you have a really good home life, right, and you can go home to an environment that's peaceful, I also think it's your parents too. So it's a lot about your home life. So if that is good, then and they support you and you want to go out, I think that's another thing. But a lot of times they'll stay in state, right? Go down to San Diego or go up to San Francisco, and just kind of stay near the family. But if that is not the case, a lot of trends are like, I'm gonna go out and do my thing, right? And I think it relates back to the home life on how you have your relationship with your family. So
yeah, that makes sense. And not everyone has the financial means to live out of state or go to a out of state school paying out of state tuition.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, well, that was another thing actually, because California is getting a lot more expensive nowadays, and my parents were looking at like Texas, even though Texas is starting to go up slowly. We were looking over there. We can get a huge house for little money, and a lot of good schools over there, a lot of Christian schools, because that's a big thing for me and my family is go to a Christian college and surround myself around other people that, go to church and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Finances is a big deal.
Well, the economics teacher in me always looks at cost of living and what you get for, how much median home price is in Santa Cruz County. I think it's over $800,000, maybe close to $900,000.
Even for rent, it's thousands a month, right?
Very high rent. It's like Santa Cruz, San Jose, San Francisco are some of the most expensive places and least affordable places in the country to live, but, for good reason, largely.
Yeah.
A lot of the, like Andre, you were mentioning, a lot of the most epic things to do are in the vicinity here.
And here, yeah.
So
over here.
But I think it's exposure to other places and other cultures and mindsets. The thing I love about IB, this new curriculum, is that it really encourages us to look at different perspectives, like international mindedness. And I think one of the best educations that young people can get is not necessarily in the classroom, but through traveling. And I encourage, for those who are able, like financially or otherwise, to go take like a Europe trip or travel to some other part of the world. There's some pretty cheap plane tickets. Like I've done a lot of my travel like through budget airlines.
Yeah.
I just think the people you meet and the conversations you have, the experiences you have are priceless. And so I did like a Euro trip after high school, my senior year in the summer, and was really one of the more impactful parts of my life. Just getting outside the bubble and leaving California and just having my eyes open. So would you be interested in that, Maddie?
I mean, it depends. I would, but I mean, that's a big step. And what do you mean by that though? Like I go to Europe and
just take like a week or a couple weeks.
Oh,
or a month.
100%, 100%, yeah, 100%.
Just check it out.
I probably the farthest place I've gone is Cabo, so I don't think that really counts as Europe. So maybe I'll have to do that. Maybe I'll have to do that when I graduate, a week or two in Europe to see what goes on over there.
And there's ways to travel on a budget, like hostels. You're sleeping, in these huge dorm rooms with like 20 other people or 10 other people from all over the world, and everyone's just sharing stories and experiences. And English is enough of an international language you can get by in most hostels, but it's not the same type of vacation you would take with your family. Like not going to all the
touristy,
stuff. It's more experiencing like having a local experience. So, hostels get bad reps, but I think international travel is just a great educational experience.
Do you think that rounded you to the person you are today?
I think it certainly impacted me. It gave me a broader perspective and looking at values of what life is all about. Especially for people working in business, I think having exposure to people living in a much lower standard of living gives you perspective, looking at family and community. I think you realize how privileged we are as Americans or people living in California regarding weather or just what our government is like or what safety looks like. But also at the same time, just hearing different stories of what other countries are like. And I've learned a lot to appreciate the differences in other people. So yeah, it was a huge part of my development personally, especially just empowering me after high school to go and stay in Europe for like weeks. It's scary. It's like your parents typically take care of stuff when you travel, but you learn this savviness of how to navigate public transportation and how to navigate in a place where you don't speak the language.
So it's kind of like taking a step into adulthood.
It's definitely
a leap.
Yes, I like that.
Big leap. But when you're most of the times, like when you're done, like even with rowing, I bet you've experienced this, or working out. It's a lot of hard work, right? And as you're doing it, you're like, wow, I want to quit. I don't see the end. But when you get close to the end and you finish, I feel like the reward is even just that much better. You know what I mean?
To grow, you must struggle. And I think in our culture, we avoid challenge, we avoid struggle, but I think then we're avoiding real growth. And so whether it's growth of your muscles, working out in the gym, or doing work and applying yourself in school, or just becoming a more well-rounded, empathetic person, I think you have to experience the challenge and struggle in order to reach your potential.
Wow. Words of wisdom from Mr. Polwrek, huh? All right. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you, Mr. Polwrek, for coming in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. No problem. And thank you for listening, Antonio, and stay tuned. Thank you.
So am I wrong for thinking that we could be something for real? Now am I wrong for trying to reach the things that I can't see? But that's just how I feel.